The Texas rig, probably the most bass catching lure of all time. Truthfully, if you wanted to get into bass fishing, this could be the only technique you learn and you will catch fish almost every trip out. Today, I'm gonna go through the versatility of this bait by going on a deep dive into the full technique from multiple ways to rig it, the gear you need, where to fish it, how to fish it, and plenty of other tips along the way so you can master your Texas rig fishing. So stay tuned and let's get right into it. So today, we are going to be mastering your Texas rig fishing. It is a very basic technique, but there are a lot of intricacies that you can do across the board and things we're gonna do throughout today's video to show you all the different ways to maximize this technique to catch the most amount of fish. You can see we have 3 rods next to us here. We are gonna go through 3 different ways to rig a Texas rig, 3 different setups. We are then gonna go out on the water. We're gonna show you where to fish this thing. And then ultimately we're gonna go through each of these 3, show you the different ways you'd retrieve each of those Texas rigs because they'll all be different. And we're gonna show you multiple different bait options on each of these. We're gonna go through like 6 different baits. So 2 on each of these rods, show you different bait choices that you can use on them and catch a lot of fish. This video is gonna be very in-depth and cover everything you need to know about the Texas rig. So kicking it off, let's start with rod number 1 right here. This is going to be a spinning rod. This is the Texas rig that I started with as a very little kid and what I would use going around ponds catching 12-inch bass. This is the Cash and Core spinning rod. 7-foot, medium power, fast action. It has a little bit of a backbone to set the hook, but it has a soft tip to cast accurately and feel what your bait's doing down there. I have a Shimano Sedona on here, and then I have my 15-pound test braid that I always use. The lime green braid, super helpful to know when your bait's on the bottom, retrieve it properly. We'll talk about that out on the water. And then I have an 8-pound test fluorocarbon leader on here. Now, when I was a kid, I didn't have braid. I just fished 8 to 10-pound test fluorocarbon, or in some cases, even monofilament back when I really didn't have a budget. If you're just getting into fishing, this is where I would start, especially with a Texas rig. Now, what I would do is I would put a weight on here, completely unpegged. And again, I have tungsten on here now. I didn't have a tungsten budget back when I was 8 years old, so I put lead weights on here and it worked just fine. So I'd use like an 1/8 ounce to a 1/4 ounce lead weight. That's all I'd put on there. I would not peg it. I would let it slide freely on the line because that's gonna get you more bites and land you more fish. Your hook sets are gonna be way better. And then I would use a 2-aught extra wide gap hook on here. And then this is just a 4-inch ringworm. And then we're gonna talk about some other baits out there on the water, but literally just a 4-inch curly tail worm. And that would catch me a ton of fish. It was a super fun way to catch them. On a spinning rod, you can still catch them with a Texas rig. It's a great way to catch them. Now, as I started to upgrade, what I would go to is a bait caster. So then this is the Cash and Icon series worm and jig rod. This is the 7-foot medium heavy fast. So this is like the next rod up from what I would buy. Pretty much everybody would probably have this setup as well. And then I would run 15 to 17-pound test straight fluorocarbon on here, and that would be my setup. And then my Texas rigs kind of got a little bit bigger too. So I would target some bigger fish with it. I started upgrading, and we're gonna go through a couple baits again on this one too. No peg on here, but I went with a 3/16 ounce weight on this for the day. We were fishing shallow water, but you can go anywhere from a 3/16 up to like probably even a half if you wanted to, doing with this technique. Most 3/8 is about as big as I would get for like a dragging Texas rig. So if I'm dragging it, I do not peg that weight in there. So I got that free floating. I got a 5/aught worm hook on here. And then we have the Busa ribbon tail worm on here. So this is a 10-inch ribbon tail worm, big bait to catch some bigger fish. It's a big upgrade from that 4-inch curly tail worm, but there's all kinds of baits you can put on your Texas rig here. You experiment with all different kinds of baits, figure out what your fish like best. You can pretty much choose anything to put on a Texas rig, but this is gonna give you a little bit more power, a little bit more accurate casting, and you're gonna be able to just handle those fish a little bit better. So if you're going to get some bigger bites, you can set the hook and get those fish in the boat or on the bank, not feel like they're gonna overpower you on the spinning rod. And when you have a Texas rigged hook and it's buried in the plastic, the heavier rod will allow it to get through the bait a little bit easier and hook up better and land more fish. The last setup that we have over here, this one's going to be a little bit different of a technique. and it's going to be an even heavier rod. So this is when the fish get into some very heavy cover. And the nice thing about a Texas rig is you can fish it from literally no cover out there in the middle of nothing and just drag it on the bottom all the way to the thickest cover that exists based on your weight and size and everything selection that you use down here at the end here. So the next rod up that I have is the Icon flipping rod. This is the 7.3 heavy fast. This thing is super heavy. I mean, it does not bend very much at all. It has just enough tip to make accurate casts, and then the rest of this rod is straight backbone. So when I set the hook, that fish is getting stuck in the mouth and I'm getting it coming towards me and into the boat. I have 20-pound test straight fluorocarbon on here. Sometimes I'll even go braid and put a fluorocarbon leader on, or if I'm fishing in heavy vegetation, I will go straight braid, no fluorocarbon leader, and flip away with that thing and not worry about breaking fish off or losing them or anything like that. Coming down here to the end, the lightest I would ever go on this is about a 1/4 ounce. I have a 3/8 ounce on here today. It's a different technique of fishing. Rather than pulling your bait on the bottom horizontally, you are making your bait go vertical. This is actually flipping with a Texas rig. So you want your bait to fall a lot quicker because you're gonna cover a lot more water. So you want it to get to the bottom, get a reaction bite, hop it in place, get it right back out and make another cast. Again, we will go through that showing you how to fish this on the water later today. And I will switch to a straight shank hook. This is going to work a lot better when you're flipping in cover because your hook point is not going to be exposed at all. So I will not get snagged on this. You will chew through plastics a little bit quicker, but you will also not get snagged and lose all your tungsten and everything as easily than if you used an extra wide gap hook. So those are the two types of hooks that I use, and it just depends on the thickness of cover on what I'm going to use. And then on here, I have a 6 cents bongo right now. We're gonna use some other stuff out there as well today, but basically you're using a more crawfish or beaver style imitation as opposed to a worm on like a dragging presentation or a lizard or something like that that I would use on those types of presentations. So you can use different types of baits to get different bites as well. So these are the 3 setups that I really like to use. They're gonna be the ones we're gonna break down today. So let's head out on the water. We're gonna walk you through where and how to fish each one of these, catch some fish along the way, and hopefully you guys will be catching more bass on a Texas rig in no time. So now that we talked about the setups for these 3 different Texas rigs, let's get to fishing these things and see if we can catch us a couple fish. We're just gonna go in order of smallest to biggest. So we're gonna start with the little ringworm on the 1/8 ounce weight and the 2/0 hook we talked about with a spinning rod. Then we'll go to the bait caster with 15-pound test and the little bit bigger worm. And then lastly, we'll go to 20-pound test and do some flipping with it and show you 3 different ways to fish a Texas rig. The thing with where to fish this thing, I mean, you literally can fish a Texas rig anywhere, which is the awesome part about it. I grew up fishing little ponds with this setup right here, and I would go fish like the bank grasses and little weeds and stuff that was around the bank. I could work my Texas rig right through that and it wouldn't get hung up in any of it because it's so weedless. You could fish it through rocks. Rocks is probably the least ideal area to fish a Texas rig solely because of the fact that like it doesn't have anything wide up front to deflect off the rocks. So if there's crevices, it'll fall down in there and then you end up getting hung up, but you can still fish it through rocks. And then wood is probably my other favorite. So wood and grass are like the most ideal places to fish a Texas rig. What we're gonna do with this thing is literally cast this out and drag it as slow as we can. So you see I'm reeling up my slack and I'm just pulling it along the bottom. I only have an 1/8 ounce weight on there, so I'm pulling it and I'm just waiting for that fish to thump it because they'll come up to it and then they'll suck it into their mouth. And with the braid especially, you'll be able to feel them literally suck it into their mouth and then set the hook. But I'm literally making a cast with this thing. If I see cover, I'm gonna cast to cover. So like there's a stick right here. I'm gonna make a cast to that stick. I'm gonna let it on some slack line sink down to the bottom. It's only 2 or 3 foot deep, so it shouldn't take long to sink. And then I'm gonna reel up my slack and I'm literally just gonna drag this thing super slow. So I feel like coming through those sticks, and occasionally, if I pull it through something really juicy, I'll kind of shake my line in place like that just a little bit, just to get the tail flicking without the bait moving. And sometimes that will get them to bite, but overall, it's just a dragging technique. Most importantly, with that 1/8 ounce weight, you really have to take your time. The biggest thing with a Texas rig is not to get in a hurry. You will catch more fish the slower you go. So take your time, throw it out there, drag it slowly on the bottom, and don't get in a rush, and just have fun fishing. And eventually you'll catch some fish. Was that a bite? There was a bite. I think he has it. Oh yeah, he's swimming right at me with it. Oh, he broke me off, no. The good news is, since I broke off, I can show you how to rig up one of these Texas rigs right here. So all we're going to do is take one of our weights. This is an 1/8 ounce, and literally slide it on your line. No peg, anything like that. Put the hook on. All I do is a Palomar knot. So what we're gonna do, we have our line in our right hand, hook in our left. We're gonna go straight through the eye, and we're gonna pull out some line. And we're gonna keep the hook in our left hand, but turn it backwards. We're gonna take the line in our right hand and go through the back side of the hook. So now you should have your main line and your tag end. And then on this side, you should have a loop, and you should be able to slide your hook back and forth on there. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this loop and I'm gonna tie an overhand knot, go behind, come in front, and go through the loop you made. And then you're gonna take this loop that you're holding your fingers with and go right over the hook. And then you're gonna pull it till it looks like that. You should have the loop, everything should be cinched up against the eye. Wet your knot, and then you're gonna pull both your tag end and your main line down till it's tight. You're gonna drop out your tag end, and you're gonna give it one cinch with your main line, and everything should be good. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this, you're gonna go straight in the nose of the bait, down to the bend of the hook. You're gonna come out the belly. You're gonna push this all the way up to where the bend of the hook is. You're gonna push it over the bend and flip it over so that it looks like that. And then you're gonna measure up where your hook needs to go in this bait, which is about this ring right here. I'm gonna pinch it, put the hook through, and now you are Texas rigged, and then to Texpose it, I just hook some of the skin of the bait back over the hook, and now you're weedless. Doesn't look pretty because that's a very thin worm, but it works. And now we have our little weighted Texas rig, and we're gonna throw it right back over there where we broke that fish off and see if there's another one. There's a bite right there. He dropped it. He got it that time. There we go, got that one. He dropped it and he came back and got it again, just dragging it real slow. That's a nice fish. Look at that one. Choked on that worm too. That's a nice one. Just dragging it real slow on the bottom. Not a bad one. Let's see if we can get us some more. So we caught one on the little ringworm here. We're gonna take him off because usually you only get about one fish out of these because they destroy them and they're super tiny. So we're gonna take him off for a second. We got a Ned fry. So basically that one had a little curly tail, can add a little action on days that they're not biting as well. Maybe this Ned fry works better because it just has a straight tail worm. So we're gonna do the same thing, punch it down through, bring it around, bring it over the top there, and Texas rig him up just like you would anything else. And now we have a little bait that has no action, just a straight tail worm. Let's see if they bite it any better. There's one. Got him. He's stuck down in there. Nope, he came out. This might be a big one. No, he's not that big. He's not bad though. Literally first cast in there after switching up the worm. They seem to not want the action, maybe. I don't know. All right, so we're gonna move on to a bigger Texas rig here, and this is one that I use 90% of the time now for pretty much all of my bass fishing. It's just a dragging Texas rig. I usually fish it on 15-pound test fluorocarbon with a bait caster. Start dragging it around, same thing. You're literally gonna cast it where you want it, let it sink down to the bottom, and we're just gonna slow drag from 9 to 11. We're not gonna do anything different, just the gear and the size of the bait has changed. Sometimes you can get some bigger bites or catch more fish just because they want a bigger meal and they can find the bait easier. There was a bite. He still has it. He's just swimming with it. So I'm gonna reel up my slack. He's coming right at me. Got him right there. See how long they'll hang on to that thing? It's crazy. I mean, he ate it all the way up there and swam it basically all the way to the boat. That's a good one there. Ate the big worm. Bigger worm, bigger fish. Sometimes, not always true, but sometimes. All right, now this bait here is again, less action bait than the one I was just throwing. So this is the Divine Shaky Worm, which works great on a shaky head or a drop shot, but it also works great just on a basic Texas rig. Because when you drag it down there, this tail has a little bit of quiver, but not too much. There's one. Got him. Is this a big fish? He's not bad. I love when the fluorocarbon screams like that. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, look at this guy. Absolutely choked on that worm. That one was on the shaky worm. So I caught a couple fish out of this little brush pile here, and they stopped biting, so I switched it up to the shaky worm, and we got us another one with that lower action bait. So you can catch them on the curly tail type worms, you can catch them on the straight tail type worms, you could throw lizards, all kinds of other stuff for them too and catch them, but those are the two that we used today. Now let's get to the last one of the day, which is this one, which is a whole different technique. So let's go move spots because that ain't gonna work right here, and see if we can catch us a couple on that. Look at that one. All right, so now we move to a more target-rich environment. We got a lot of standing timber, we got lily pads, we got laydowns, we got a bunch of stuff we can throw at that these fish can be in, where it can be much more difficult to drag a bait through all this, and that's why I'm gonna switch up the type of Texas rig I throw. So we're gonna be throwing the flipping type Texas rig. So all I'm literally gonna do, you'll see, I'll drag it a little bit, so like I'll kind of drag it through some of this stuff, but for the most part, I'm gonna pick a target, I'm gonna flip my bait to it rather than cast. I'm gonna let it go all the way down to the bottom. I'm gonna lift up and see if there's a fish there. If not, I'm gonna hop it a couple times in place. And then if I don't get anything, I'm bringing it out and I'm making another cast to a different target. And I'm gonna try and hit as many targets as I possibly can because that's gonna equal the most amount of fish, especially when they literally could be anywhere up here. I'm gonna work this bait fast, and we're gonna cover a lot of water to try and find these fish and make sure my bait is staying in front of fish instead of keeping it, dragging it slow. And like, that was a brush pile back there. I knew the fish were there. I dragged my bait really slowly through that. I was working that area thoroughly to try and get them to bite, knowing there were fish there. Now we're almost kind of searching for fish to see if there's anything around, and we're flipping to as much stuff as we can to find the fish, and we want to work a little bit quicker. So not only are we gonna work our bait quicker, but we're gonna hook set harder because we gotta get our bait through that meat and out of the cover. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into this technique over the other one. So let's get to flipping and see what we can catch. Got that one. Put the poles down, sometimes there's extras. That's not a bad fish. I literally pitched it right in this little cluster of logs right here, and as soon as it kind of came off the log and fell, he yanked it right out of my hand, took the slack out of it, and just started swimming through all those logs. That's his home. He doesn't know he's connected to line, so he starts swimming through all those logs, and he can get you all wrapped up if you don't get him out in time. So you set the hook quick, you yank him out and get him out of the cover, and then play him out here, and that's how you land some fish. All right, now just like we did with all the other Texas rigs, we're gonna do the same thing with this, because there is a bait with a lot of action and a bait without action that you can do with this. So we fished with a beaver. That was the 6th Sense prawn is what we were using. So now we're switching it up. This is the 6th Sense bongo, which basically is a craw profile, but it has little ridges on its tails, so it flaps in the water a little bit. So we're gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna see which one they prefer today. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna take your bait just like you would a regular Texas rig. You're gonna go in and down to the bend. You're gonna pop it out the belly, and you're going to run it up to this keeper here. Now, all these straight shank hooks will have this keeper. The worst thing you can do is flip it over first and shove it over. You're gonna have a hard day of fishing doing that. Leave it upside down and go over the keeper entirely. It will rip that channel in the top of the head here. I've talked about this before. When you get it over, you flip it, and that keeper is designed to hold that piece of plastic right there that you did not rip. And then you're gonna come back here and line up your bait. You're gonna poke that through, but not all the way through. You're just going to gently bury the hook in the plastic there. And a lot of times you're gonna lose more plastics doing this than you will on a extra wide gap hook. You won't be able to reuse them as much. But by doing that, your bait is going to be much more weedless than using an extra wide gap in this cover. If I was using an extra wide gap through this cover, I just flipped probably 100 yards of wood. I probably would have had to go get my bait like 19 times already. I had to get it once, and it got wedged in between the weight. So use that straight shank hook when you're flipping in this heavier cover, and it'll stay on a lot better, and you'll be able to land more fish. I got that one. It's big. She's big. She's not as big as I thought. Still a nice fish though. While the Texas rig is an amazing bait to catch a ton of fish, as we proved in today's video, if you want to see my other favorite technique to catch even more bass when you're out there on your local bodies of water, check this video out right there. Hit the subscribe button down below, and thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.